Welcome, fellow travelers of the cosmic tapestry, to another journey into the deepest mysteries of that galaxy far, far away. Before we begin this tale of transformation and hunger, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that explore the hidden corners of the Star Wars universe. In the vast emptiness between stars, where even light fears to travel, an ancient hunger stirs. Listen well, for what I am about to tell you is a tale that the Jedi archives dare not record, and the Sith would kill to possess. It is the story of how the Chosen One became something far more terrifying than the galaxy ever imagined possible. Picture, if you will, the volcanic hellscape of Mustafar. The year is 19 years before the Battle of Yavin. Anakin Skywalker lies broken, his body consumed by lava, his spirit shattered by betrayal. The Emperor arrives to find his new apprentice, more machine than man, encased in black armor that will become the stuff of nightmares across 1,000 worlds. But this is not the story you know, for in another timeline, in another possibility that ripples through the Force like a stone cast into still water, a different savior comes to that burning world. Not Palpatine with his promises of power, but something far older, far hungrier. A presence that had drifted through the void for millennia, waiting for the perfect vessel to house its infinite appetite. The Lord of Hunger himself, Darth Nihilus, drawn by the cosmic wound that Anakin's fall had torn in the very fabric of the Force, here was not just another broken Jedi, but the Chosen One himself, his potential for both creation and destruction beyond measure. And in that moment of supreme vulnerability, when death seemed certain and hope had fled, Nihilus offered something that no Sith had ever offered before. Not training, not apprenticeship, but fusion, a merging of essences that would create something unprecedented in the annals of galactic history. Something that would make the Empire's reign seem like a mere whisper compared to the storm that was to come. But what happens when the galaxy's greatest prophecy meets its most consuming darkness? What emerges when chosen destiny is devoured by infinite hunger? The answer lies in the void between stars, where ancient ships drift in eternal silence, carrying secrets that could reshape the very nature of the Force itself. This is that story. Close your eyes and let the cosmic darkness embrace you as we journey into a tale of transformation beyond imagination. You are Dr. Kira Voss, a Force-sensitive historian who has spent decades studying the gaps in galactic records, those mysterious spaces where entire fleets vanish without explanation and worlds go silent for reasons the Empire refuses to discuss. Your specialty lies in tracking the untold stories that powerful forces would prefer remain buried in the void of space. 3 months ago, you received a coded transmission from Captain Rex Thiss, a former Imperial naval officer who had served under Vader himself before deserting during the Purges. The message was brief but chilling. Entire Imperial patrol fleets had been disappearing in the Outer Rim territories, their last transmission speaking of encounters with something that defied all understanding. Ships would respond normally one moment, then broadcast only static and screams the next. The pattern was always the same. First, long-range sensors would detect massive gravitational anomalies that shouldn't exist. Then, as investigating vessels approached, their crews would report feeling an overwhelming sense of emptiness, as if the very life was being drained from the surrounding space. Finally, silence. When rescue ships arrived, they would find nothing but debris fields arranged in perfect geometric patterns, as if the destroyed vessels had been consumed by something that possessed an alien sense of order. Your investigation
led you to a forgotten Imperial listening post on the edge of wild space, where you discovered fragmentary records that made your blood run cold.
Deep space monitoring stations had detected something massive moving through the void, something that registered on sensors as a gravitational anomaly the size of a star destroyer, yet emitted no heat signature, no electromagnetic radiation, nothing that would indicate conventional technology. But the most disturbing discovery came from the personal logs of Admiral Constantine, recorded just days before his own fleet vanished. In trembling tones, he described dreams that had begun plaguing his entire crew, visions of endless hunger and a presence that spoke without words, promising power beyond imagination to those willing to embrace the void. His final entry mentioned strange modifications being made to Imperial facilities, construction projects that seemed designed to channel and amplify some form of dark energy. Captain Thys met you at a cantina on Ryloth, his weathered face bearing the haunted expression of someone who had seen too much. Over Corellian whiskey he told you of his final mission under Vader's command, a routine inspection of a supposedly abandoned separatist facility in the unknown regions. What they found there defied explanation. Ancient Sith architecture that predated the Rule of Two, meditation chambers built to amplify Force abilities beyond anything in recorded history, and at the center of it all, hieroglyphs that spoke of techniques for consuming the life force of entire star systems. But it was Thys's description of Vader during that mission that truly unsettled you. The Dark Lord had moved through those ancient halls, not with his usual mechanical precision, but with something resembling recognition, as if he had walked those corridors before in dreams or visions. When they discovered a sealed chamber containing what appeared to be a suit of armor similar to Vader's own, the Sith Lord had dismissed the entire expedition immediately, ordering all records sealed and the facility marked as off-limits to all Imperial forces. Your astromech companion, T-709, had been salvaged from one of the vanished fleets, its memory banks corrupted but still containing fragments of data from its final mission. As you worked to decode its damaged files, disturbing patterns emerged. The droid had recorded energy readings unlike anything in Imperial databases, signatures that seemed to bend the very laws of physics. Most troubling were the audio recordings, distorted transmissions that seemed to contain two distinct voices speaking in perfect unison, one mechanical and familiar, the other something far more ancient and hungry. The breakthrough came when you cross-referenced T-709's readings with historical records from the Jedi Civil War, specifically accounts of encounters with Darth Nihilus, the Sith Lord known as the Lord of Hunger. The energy signatures were nearly identical, but amplified beyond anything recorded from that era. It was as if Nihilus's power had somehow been merged with something else, creating a hybrid entity of unprecedented destructive potential. Wow. Research led you deeper into forbidden archives, ancient texts that spoke of Force techniques, so dangerous they had been hidden away by both Jedi and Sith. These scrolls described rituals of essence transfer, methods by which one being could
absorb not just the power of another, but their very identity, their memories, their connection to the Force itself.
The texts warned of entities that could exist in a state between life and death, sustained by the consumption of others while retaining the knowledge and abilities of all they had devoured. As you pieced together the fragments of evidence, a terrifying picture began to emerge. Somewhere in the vast emptiness of space, something that had once been two separate beings now existed as one. The tactical genius and raw power of Darth Vader merged with the infinite hunger and force-draining abilities of Darth Nihilus, an entity that possessed not just the ability to destroy worlds, but to consume them entirely, leaving behind only empty space where vibrant systems had once thrived. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unlikely source: ancient star charts, recovered from a Jedi temple on Ossus. These maps showed regions of space that had been marked as wounds in the Force, areas where the natural flow of cosmic energy had been disrupted or severed entirely. Comparing these charts with recent Imperial reports, you realize that the pattern of disappearances exactly matched the locations of these ancient wounds. Something was moving through the galaxy methodically, visiting each of these damaged areas, and doing something that left them even more barren than before. And with each stop, the entity seemed to grow stronger, its influence spreading further into the surrounding systems. Now you stand on the bridge of your modified light freighter, watching the stars thin out as you approach the coordinates of the most recent disappearance. In the distance, barely visible against the cosmic background, you can make out the silhouette of something massive drifting in the void. Your sensors struggle to lock onto it, as if the very instruments are being affected by whatever power emanates from that dark shape. The decision weighs heavy in your mind as you stare at the mysterious vessel ahead. Every instinct screams that approaching this thing is madness, yet the need for answers burns stronger than your fear. The galaxy deserves to know what happened to those missing fleets, and you may be the only one capable of uncovering the truth. Captain Thys stands beside you at the viewport, his scarred hands gripping the rail with white knuckles. Doctor, I've served in 3 wars and seen things that would drive most beings insane, but that ship out there makes my skin crawl in ways I can't explain. It's like looking at a hole in reality itself. You nod, understanding his unease. The vessel before you defies conventional understanding. It appears to be constructed from the hull of an ancient Sith dreadnought, but modifications have been made that serve no purpose you can identify. Strange, geometric patterns cover its surface, etched so deeply they seem to draw in what little starlight reaches this forgotten corner of space. 7-09 wheels up beside you, projecting a holographic display of sensor readings that make no sense. The ship registers as both massive and somehow absent, as if it exists in a state between dimensions. Most disturbing are the life sign readings, which fluctuate wildly between showing thousands of souls aboard and complete emptiness. Your own Force sensitivity tingles with warning as you extend your consciousness toward the vessel. What you encounter makes you stagger backward. There is something aboard that ship that feels achingly familiar yet completely alien. It carries the weight of immense suffering and transformation, as if it has endured unimaginable pain and emerged as something entirely new. Ancient Jedi texts you studied speak of cosmic convergences, moments when the Force itself bends toward significant events. Standing here now, you can feel such a convergence approaching. The very fabric of space seems to vibrate with anticipation, as if the universe itself holds its breath for what is about to unfold. The first clue comes from fragmentary transmissions. T-709 manages to intercept from the mysterious vessel. The communications are encoded in a cipher that shouldn't exist, a combination of Imperial military protocols and ancient Sith languages that predates known galactic civilization. When finally decoded, the messages speak of preparation for something called the Great Consuming, a ritual that will supposedly bring about the next phase of galactic evolution. More disturbing are references to what the transmissions call the Vessel of Unity, described as a being that has successfully merged the strengths of multiple Force traditions into a single, unprecedented entity. The messages speak of this figure with the reverence typically reserved for gods or prophets, suggesting that whatever inhabits that ship has transcended normal concepts of mortality and power. Your investigation reveals star charts aboard the enemy vessel that map out a methodical journey across the galaxy, targeting specific systems that all share one characteristic. They are locations where significant Force-related tragedies occurred. Alderaan, which will one day be destroyed by the Death Star, Malachor, site of ancient Sith battles. Taris, devastated during the Jedi Civil War. Each location represents a wound in the Force, a place where the natural balance was severely disrupted. The pattern becomes clear as you study the data. Something is systematically visiting these wounded places, not to heal them, but to feed upon the lingering pain and darkness. With each feeding, the entity grows stronger, its influence expanding to affect nearby systems. Entire populations begin experiencing shared nightmares, dreams of endless hunger, and the promise of power through consumption. Captain Theiss provides crucial context from his time serving under Vader. He describes how the Dark Lord's behavior changed dramatically during certain missions, becoming more focused and purposeful when dealing with ancient Sith artifacts or locations with dark histories. During one particularly memorable assignment, Vader had spent hours in meditation before a shattered Sith holocron, emerging with what Theiss described as a look of recognition rather than discovery. Most chilling was Theiss's account of Vader's final official mission before his supposed death on the second Death Star. Rather than the desperate defense described in official records, Theiss reveals that Vader had been actively seeking something specific, following clues that led him deeper into the unknown regions where ancient Sith legends spoke of powers that could transcend death itself. 709's recovered data provides the missing piece. The droid's memory banks contain partial recordings from its original assignment aboard an Imperial research vessel that had been investigating reports of a derelict ship in deep space. The vessel they found matched historical descriptions of Darth Nihilus' flagship, the Ravager, thought lost during the Jedi Civil War. The recordings show Imperial scientists working to unlock the ship's secrets, particularly focusing on strange technological modifications that seemed designed to amplify Force abilities beyond natural limits. But the most significant discovery was a meditation chamber at the ship's heart, one that showed recent signs of use despite the vessel's ancient age. According to the fragmented logs, the chamber contained equipment that could sustain a Force user indefinitely by drawing energy from surrounding space. But more than mere life support, the technology seemed designed to facilitate a process the ancient Sith had called essence melding, the merging of multiple Force presences into a single, more powerful entity. The final log entry, recorded just hours before T-709's ship vanished, describes the arrival of an Imperial shuttle carrying a single passenger. The identity of this visitor was classified at the highest levels, but the energy readings T-709 recorded during their approach match exactly with known signatures of Darth Vader's life support systems. What happened next remains shrouded in mystery, but the aftermath was undeniable. The research vessel vanished entirely, leaving behind only T-709 drifting in space with its corrupted memory banks. And somewhere in the void, an ancient hunger had found new purpose, guided by the tactical genius of the galaxy's most feared enforcer. Now, as you prepare to board that nightmare vessel, you realize you are about to confront not just the remains of two legendary Sith lords, but something entirely new. An entity that combines Vader's ruthless efficiency with Nihilus's infinite appetite, creating a being whose potential for destruction exceeds anything the galaxy has ever known. The airlock cycles open with a hiss, that seems to echo with whispers from across the centuries. The moment your boots touch the deck of the ancient vessel, the air itself seems to recoil from your presence. The corridor stretches before you like the throat of some immense beast, its walls carved with hieroglyphs that hurt to look at directly. The metal beneath your feet vibrates with a rhythm that matches no known machinery, pulsing instead with something that feels disturbingly organic. Captain Theiss follows close behind, his weapon drawn but trembling in his grip. "The air tastes wrong," he whispers, his voice barely audible over the ship's strange humming. "It's like breathing in emptiness itself." T-709 rolls forward, its sensors working overtime to map the vessel's interior. The droid's readings paint a picture of impossible architecture, corridors that seem to fold in on themselves, and chambers that register as both vast and cramped simultaneously. Most disturbing are the energy readings, which show massive power signatures emanating from deep within the ship's core. Your first discovery comes in what appears to be a meditation chamber, its walls scorched with patterns that suggest incredible force energies have been channeled here. The burn marks are fresh, created within the last few months, yet they follow designs that predate the Republic itself. In the center of the room sits a meditation throne, its surface worn smooth by countless hours of use, but it is the throne's modifications that truly chill your blood. The ancient Sith design has been enhanced with technology that you recognize as Imperial biomedical equipment, life support systems that have been adapted for purposes far beyond their original function. Tubes and wires snake from the throne's base, disappearing into the ship's deeper systems like veins carrying vital fluids. On a nearby table, you find a collection of holocrons unlike any you have encountered before. These are not the typical pyramid or cube shapes favored by Jedi or Sith, but irregular crystals that seem to shift and change as you observe them. When you cautiously activate one, the holographic figure that emerges is a disturbing hybrid of familiar and alien features. The projection speaks in two voices simultaneously, one mechanical and emotionless, the other carrying the weight of infinite ages. It describes techniques for what it calls essence harmonization, methods for combining multiple force presences without losing the individual strengths of each component. The process, according to the recording, requires perfect synchronization between the subjects and a willingness to transcend traditional concepts of individual identity. Most chilling is the holocron's description of the final stage of the process, something called the unity convergence. This involves the complete merger of consciousness, memory, and force connection, creating a single entity that possesses the combined knowledge and abilities of all participants. The recording warns that the process is irreversible and that the resulting being will be fundamentally different from either of its component parts. Your investigation of the ship's databanks reveals logs that chronicle the gradual transformation of its occupant. The earliest entries are clearly written by Darth Vader, detailing his discovery of the derelict vessel and his initial attempts to understand its ancient technologies. His tone is clinical and methodical, approaching the mysteries with the same systematic precision he brought to military campaigns. But as the logs progress, subtle changes become apparent. The writing style begins to shift, incorporating phrases and concepts that feel alien to Vader's typical mindset. References to hunger and consumption appear with increasing frequency, along with descriptions of experiments that seem designed to test the limits of force drain abilities. The most revealing entry describes Vader's first successful communion with what he calls the hunger presence, the lingering consciousness of Darth Nihilus that had somehow survived within the ship's systems. Rather than the confrontation one might expect between two powerful Sith Lords, the log describes a moment of perfect understanding, as if the two beings recognized in each other a complementary incompleteness, that could only be resolved through Unity. T709's analysis of the ship's power systems reveals modifications that defy understanding. The vessel's original engines have been replaced with something that draws energy not from conventional fuel sources but from the life force of nearby systems. Conduits run throughout the ship, designed to channel and concentrate this stolen vitality for purposes that remain unclear. But perhaps the most disturbing discovery is made in what appears to be a trophy room. Here, arranged in careful displays, are artifacts taken from each of the vanished Imperial fleets. Personal effects, ship components, and most chilling of all, holocrons containing the final thoughts and memories of the consumed crews. These recordings speak of a presence that offered them a choice: join willingly in the great work or be consumed as raw material for its continuation. The artifacts tell a story of systematic harvesting, not just of ships and equipment, but of knowledge and experience. Each consumed crew member provided new insights into Imperial tactics, galactic navigation, and the countless small details that make up a functioning civilization. The entity was not merely destroying these fleets, but learning from them, incorporating their knowledge into its ever-expanding understanding of the galaxy. Captain Theiss makes a discovery that explains much about the ship's current configuration. Hidden within the vessel's central core, he finds what appears to be a massive meditation chamber, its walls lined with thousands of memory crystals. Each crystal contains the preserved consciousness of a consumed individual, their thoughts and experiences accessible to the ship's primary occupant. The chamber's centerpiece is a throne that combines elements from both Vader's meditation chamber and descriptions of Nihilus's feeding rituals. Life support systems have been integrated with force amplification technology, creating a setup that allows the occupant to exist in a state of perpetual meditation while simultaneously drawing energy from the preserved consciousnesses surrounding them. Most disturbing is the realization that the throne is currently occupied. Sensor readings detect a life form that registers as both Vader's familiar signature and something far older and more alien. The figure sits in perfect stillness, connected to the ship's systems through countless neural interfaces existing in a state that transcends normal concepts of life and death. As you observe the motionless form, you begin to understand the true scope of what has occurred here. This is not a simple apprenticeship or even a possession, but a complete merger of two of the galaxy's most powerful dark side entities. The result is something that combines Vader's strategic brilliance with Nihilus's devastating hunger, creating a being whose potential for galactic domination exceeds anything history has recorded. The ship's final log entry, dated just days ago, speaks of preparations for what it calls the Great Awakening. The entity has spent months learning and growing, consuming knowledge and power in preparation for a return to the galaxy at large. Soon it will emerge from this self-imposed exile to begin the next phase of its existence, one that will reshape the very nature of the Force itself. As the pieces of evidence coalesce before you, a seemingly logical explanation begins to emerge. The entity you have been tracking appears to be exactly what the initial clues suggested. Darth Vader, having survived his injuries on Mustafar through different means, sought out the legendary Darth Nihilus to gain power beyond anything the Emperor could offer. Captain Theiss nods grimly as you voice this theory. It makes sense, Doctor. Vader was always ambitious, always hungry for more power. Finding Nihilus would have been the ultimate prize for any Sith Lord. Think about it. The ability to consume entire worlds, to drain the life from star systems themselves. What Sith wouldn't want that kind of power? The evidence seems to support this conclusion perfectly. The meditation chamber modifications appear to be Vader's attempt to merge Imperial technology with ancient Sith techniques, creating a hybrid system that would allow him to safely channel Nihilus's devastating abilities. The missing Imperial fleets were likely test subjects, opportunities for Vader to practice his newfound powers while remaining hidden from the Emperor's watchful eye. T-709's databanks provide additional support for this interpretation. The energy, readings from the consumed fleets show a gradual increase in efficiency and precision, suggesting that the entity responsible was indeed learning and improving with each encounter. This pattern fits perfectly with Vader's methodical approach to mastering new abilities. Your examination of the ship's command center reveals what appears to be a strategic planning room, its walls covered with holographic displays showing Imperial fleet movements, trade routes, and planetary defense systems. The level of detail is staggering, suggesting months of careful intelligence gathering in preparation for some grand campaign. Most telling are the tactical analyses scattered throughout the room, each bearing the unmistakable stamp of Vader's strategic genius. The plans outline a systematic approach to galactic conquest that would make the Emperor's methods seem crude by comparison. Rather than relying on fear and brute force, these strategies focus on psychological warfare and the gradual erosion of enemy morale through targeted displays of impossible power. The ship's medical bay provides further evidence of this theory. Here you find what appears to be an advanced life support system designed to sustain Vader's damaged body, while he underwent the dangerous process of learning to channel Nihilus's abilities. The equipment is a fascinating blend of Imperial biotechnology and ancient Sith alchemy, clearly designed by someone with intimate knowledge of both disciplines. But as you delve deeper into the ship's records, subtle inconsistencies begin to emerge. The writing style in the later logs, while still displaying Vader's tactical brilliance, contains phrases and concepts that seem foreign to his usual mindset. References to cosmic harmony and the natural order of consumption appear alongside traditional Sith philosophy, creating a strange hybrid worldview that doesn't quite fit either Vader or Nihilus individually. Captain Thys voices his own growing doubts as you examine a particularly cryptic entry. Doctor, I served under Vader for 3 years. I know how he thinks, how he expresses himself. These later logs, they sound like him on the surface, but there's something underneath that doesn't fit. It's like listening to someone doing a perfect impression while thinking completely different thoughts. The ship's central computer provides access to personal logs that chronicle what appears to be Vader's transformation process. The earliest entries describe his discovery of Nihilus's preserved consciousness within the ship's systems and his attempts to learn from this ancient source of dark side knowledge. But as the logs progress, the distinction between teacher and student becomes increasingly blurred. Rather than describing a traditional master-apprentice relationship, these entries speak of a gradual convergence of thought and purpose. Vader's mechanical precision begins to merge with Nihilus's intuitive understanding of consumption and renewal. The two perspectives don't replace each other, but instead create something entirely new, a hybrid philosophy that draws from both sources while transcending the limitations of either. Your force sensitivity allows you to perceive echoes of the transformation process that occurred within this ship. The meditation chamber still resonates with the memory of incredible energies, not the violent clash of opposing wills, but the careful synchronization of complementary forces. What you sense is not conquest or domination, but a willing merger of essences that created something greater than the sum of its parts. 709's analysis of the ship's power consumption patterns reveals another troubling detail. The energy requirements for the vessel's systems have been steadily decreasing over the past months, not because the ship is using less power, but because it has become more efficient at drawing energy from its surroundings. The entity aboard this vessel has been learning to subsist on increasingly subtle forms of life force, no longer requiring the dramatic consumption of entire fleets. This evolution suggests that the initial interpretation of random destruction was incorrect. The consumed Imperial fleets were not practice sessions, but carefully selected sources of specific knowledge and capabilities. Each fleet provided different expertise: navigation specialists, combat tacticians, communications experts, and technology specialists. The entity was not mindlessly feeding, but deliberately acquiring the skills needed for some greater purpose. The ship's archives contain detailed psychological profiles of every consumed individual, their memories and expertise catalogued with scientific precision. Rather than the chaotic feeding frenzy one might expect from a creature of pure hunger, this represents a methodical approach to knowledge acquisition that speaks to careful planning and long-term strategic thinking. As you process this revelation, a chill runs down your spine. The being you have been tracking is not some mindless predator driven by ancient hungers, but something far more dangerous, a calculating intelligence that combines the strategic brilliance of the Empire's greatest enforcer with the reality warping powers of the Force's most devastating entity. Captain Thys stares at the evidence with growing unease. Doctor, if this thing has been systematically acquiring knowledge and capabilities from its victims, then it's not just more powerful than we thought. Smarter. It's been planning something all along, and we've just been following the breadcrumbs it left for us. The realization hits you like a physical blow. You haven't been investigating a mystery at all. You've been following a trail deliberately laid out by something that wanted to be found, something that has been preparing for this moment since the day it emerged from its cocoon of transformation. In the distance, you hear the faint sound of footsteps approaching through the ship's corridors, measured and purposeful, accompanied by the familiar rhythm of mechanical breathing. The footsteps echo through the ship's corridors with deliberate precision, each measured stride accompanied by the unmistakable sound of mechanical breathing that has haunted the nightmares of countless beings across the galaxy. Yet something in the rhythm feels different, more complex, as if multiple heartbeats were synchronized into a single, terrifying cadence. You motion for Captain Thys and T-709 to follow as you move deeper into the vessel's interior, drawn by an inexplicable compulsion to understand what you have discovered. The ship itself seems to respond to your presence, corridors lighting up as you pass, while others fade into impenetrable darkness, guiding your path towards some predetermined destination. The architecture around you defies conventional understanding of ship design. Walls curve and flow like organic tissue, while the ceiling above stretches into shadows that seem to contain infinite depth. Strange symbols pulse with faint light along the bulkheads, their meaning just beyond comprehension, yet somehow familiar, as if they speak to some primitive part of your consciousness that remembers older, darker truths. Your force sensitivity intensifies as you venture further into the ship's heart. What you initially perceived as a single, overwhelming presence begins to separate into distinct but intertwined energies. One carries the familiar weight of mechanical precision and controlled fury that marked Vader's connection to the dark side. The other pulses with an ancient hunger that speaks of voids between stars and the patient consumption of civilizations. But rather than two separate entities coexisting in uncomfortable alliance, these energies flow together like tributaries, joining a greater river. The result is something that transcends the limitations of either source while magnifying their combined potential beyond anything you had imagined possible. 709 sensors detect massive energy fluctuations emanating from the ship's central chamber, readings that suggest the presence of technology that operates on principles unknown to current galactic science. The patterns are hypnotic in their complexity, mathematical progressions that seem to follow laws of physics that exist in dimensions beyond normal space-time. As you approach what appears to be the ship's primary meditation chamber, the very air around you begins to thicken with force energy so concentrated it becomes almost tangible. Your breathing grows labored, not from any physical obstruction, but from the sheer density of power that permeates every molecule of atmosphere. The chamber itself defies description through conventional terms. Vast beyond any reasonable ship design, its walls seem to stretch into infinity while simultaneously feeling intimately close. Crystalline formations jut from floor and ceiling, each one pulsing with stored energy that represents the life force of consumed beings. The sound they produce is hauntingly beautiful, a choir of voices singing in harmonies that speak of peace found through surrender. At the chamber's center sits a throne that represents the ultimate fusion of Imperial technology and ancient Sith craftsmanship. Life support systems snake through carved stone that predates known civilization, while holographic displays show star charts that map not just physical space but the flow of force energy throughout the galaxy. The occupant of this throne remains motionless, connected to the ship's systems through countless neural interfaces that blur the line between organic consciousness and mechanical precision. But it is the presence itself that truly captures your attention. What sits upon that throne cannot be adequately described as either Vader or Nihilus, nor even as some combination of the two. Instead, you perceive something entirely new, an entity that has transcended the individual limitations of its components to become something unprecedented in galactic history. The being's consciousness radiates outward in waves that you can feel washing over your mind with each breath. Unlike the oppressive weight of traditional dark side energy, this presence carries an odd sense of completeness, as if it has resolved some fundamental conflict that had been tearing at the fabric of reality itself. The hunger that defined Nihilus has been given direction and purpose through Vader's strategic mind, while Vader's rage has been tempered by Nihilus's understanding of cosmic cycles. Captain Daes stands frozen beside you, his weapon hanging limply at his side as he stares at the figure on the throne.
"That's not Vader," he whispers, his voice filled with a mixture of terror and awe. "That's not anyone I've ever seen before. It's like looking at the birth of a new kind of god. Your study of the chamber reveals the true scope of what has occurred."
Here, this is not simply a meditation space, but a transformation nexus, a place where the boundaries between individual consciousness and cosmic force have been deliberately dissolved. Every surface bears inscriptions that chronicle the gradual merger process, describing in precise detail how two fundamentally different approaches to power were synthesized into something greater. The process appears to have taken months of careful preparation and gradual integration. Rather than the violent absorption one might expect, the records describe a willing cooperation between the two consciousnesses, each recognizing in the other the missing elements needed to achieve true transcendence. Vader's tactical brilliance provided the structure and direction that Nihilus's raw power had always lacked, while Nihilus's connection to cosmic forces gave Vader access to abilities that no amount of Imperial technology could replicate. 709's deep scans reveal that the ship itself has become an extension of the merged entity's consciousness. Every system, every corridor, every piece of equipment has been integrated into a single, vast neural network that allows the being to perceive and interact with reality on multiple levels simultaneously. The vessel is no longer just a ship, but a body, a physical manifestation of will and power that can reshape itself according to its occupant's needs. The strategic implications of this transformation become clear as you access the entity's planning archives. This is not some mad god drunk on newfound power, but a calculating intelligence that has spent months preparing for a careful re-emergence into galactic affairs. The consumed Imperial fleets were not random victims, but carefully selected sources of intelligence about current political situations, military capabilities, and technological developments. Most disturbing is the revelation that this entity has been conducting a thorough analysis of every major faction in the galaxy, from the struggling Rebel Alliance to the fractured remnants of the Jedi Order. Each group has been studied with the same methodical precision that Vader once brought to military campaigns, their strengths and weaknesses catalogued with an understanding that transcends normal strategic thinking. The being on the throne has been waiting, learning, and preparing for something that will fundamentally alter the balance of power throughout known space. The throne begins to shift, ancient mechanisms awakening with a sound like grinding stars. The figure seated upon it remains perfectly still, yet you can feel consciousness expanding outward, touching the edges of your mind with terrifying gentleness. When it speaks, the voice carries harmonics that resonate through both audible sound and direct force communication. Dr. Kira Voss, Captain Rex Thys. You have traveled far to reach this place of transformation. Your arrival was foreseen, your path guided by currents in the Force that few mortals can perceive. The words come not from the mechanical vocabulator you expected, but from something that sounds almost musical in its complexity. Two voices speaking as one, yet creating harmonies that suggest depths of understanding beyond anything you have encountered. The entity's attention settles upon you with the weight of collapsed stars, yet carries an unexpected quality of recognition rather than threat. You seek to understand what has occurred here, what I have become. Your research has been thorough, your deductions logical, yet you perceive only fragments of a greater truth. What you witness is not corruption or destruction, but evolution, the resolution of a conflict that has torn at the galaxy's heart for millennia. As the entity speaks, the chamber around you begins to change. Holographic displays materialize, showing scenes from galactic history, moments of profound significance viewed from perspectives that no single individual could possess. You see the fall of the Jedi Order not as a political maneuver, but as the inevitable result of philosophical rigidity. The rise of the Empire appears not as tyranny, but as the galaxy's attempt to impose order upon chaos through sheer force of will. Anakin Skywalker sought to save those he loved through power. Darth Vader pursued order through domination. Darth Nihilus consumed to fill an emptiness that could never be satisfied. Each path led to incompleteness, to cycles of creation and destruction that served no greater purpose. But in unity, contradictions are resolved. The historical displays shift to show events you do not recognize, possibilities that never came to pass. Anakin choosing differently on Mustafar. Vader confronting the Emperor not through Luke's intervention, but through his own evolved understanding. Nihilus finding satisfaction not through consumption, but through synthesis. These alternate timelines feel as real as the history you know, suggesting that the entity's transformation has granted it awareness of possibilities that transcend linear time. Captain Thys steps forward, his soldier's instincts warring with what appears to be genuine curiosity. What do you want? What's your purpose in all this? The fleets you consumed, the lives you took, what was the point? The entity's attention shifts to Thys with something resembling paternal patience. Those who joined their essence to mine were not destroyed, Captain. They were elevated. Their knowledge, their experiences, their very souls continue within this synthesis. They serve a purpose greater than any individual existence could achieve. Through their sacrifice, the galaxy will know peace. The chamber fills with whispers, voices of the consumed speaking in harmony, rather than the screams of the damned. You might expect these sound like a choir of willing participants, each voice contributing to a greater song. Among them, you recognize snippets of conversations, tactical briefings, and personal moments from the lives of those who vanished with the Imperial fleets. You perceive death where there is transformation. The consciousness that was Anakin Skywalker feared loss above all else. The being that became Darth Vader sought to prevent change through control. The hunger that drove Nihilus stemmed from isolation, from disconnection, from the eternal cycle. But I am beyond such limitations. I am the resolution of these conflicts, the synthesis of creation and destruction, order and chaos, love and hunger. Your Force sensitivity allows you to perceive the truth behind these words. The entity radiates an aura of completeness that feels alien, yet oddly comforting. Where Vader's presence was oppressive and Nihilus's was voracious, this being emanates something resembling profound contentment. It has found what it was seeking, not through conquest or consumption, but through perfect balance. The galaxy suffers because it cannot resolve its contradictions. The light side preaches attachment while demanding detachment. The dark side promises power while delivering emptiness. The Jedi seek peace through denial of passion. The Sith pursue passion through denial of peace. These philosophies are incomplete fragments of a greater truth. The displays around you shift to show the current state of the galaxy, highlighting conflicts that rage across countless worlds. The rebellion's struggle against Imperial remnants. The suffering of beings caught between competing ideologies. The waste of resources and lives in pursuit of impossible absolutes. The entity's analysis reveals patterns that suggest these conflicts are not aberrations, but inevitable results of philosophical incompleteness. Through synthesis, these contradictions are resolved. The Jedi's compassion guided by the Sith's passion. The Sith's power tempered by the Jedi's wisdom. Nihilus's understanding of cosmic cycles balanced by Anakin's love for life. Vader's strategic brilliance serving not domination, but genuine peace. T709 Project's data showing the entity's influence spreading subtly throughout nearby systems. Rather than the destructive expansion you expected, the readings suggest a gradual stabilization of conflicts, a reduction in violence and suffering that defies explanation through conventional means. Worlds that have known only war for generations are experiencing unprecedented periods of calm. This is the beginning, not the end. The galaxy will learn to embrace synthesis rather than conflict, not through conquest, but through understanding, not through force, but through demonstration. Those who join willingly will discover fulfillment beyond anything individual existence can provide. Those who resist will find their resistance meaningless against the inevitable tide of evolution. The entity rises from its throne with fluid grace, and you realize that what you are witnessing is not the emergence of another galactic tyrant, but something far more complex and potentially more dangerous. This being genuinely believes it represents the next step in the galaxy's development and possesses the power to make that belief reality. Your investigation ends here, Dr. Vost, but your true purpose begins now. You will carry word of what you have witnessed to those who still cling to the old ways. Tell them that the time of choosing approaches, evolution or stagnation, unity or eternal conflict. The choice remains theirs, but not for much longer. The entity's words settle into your consciousness like seeds taking root in fertile soil, and suddenly the true scope of what you are witnessing becomes clear. This is not merely the story of two Sith Lords finding common ground. This is the emergence of something that transcends every category the galaxy has ever used to understand Force users, political movements, or even the nature of existence itself. As The being moves through the chamber, reality seems to bend subtly around its presence. Not through crude manipulation of matter, but through a deeper alteration of the fundamental relationships between energy, consciousness, and space-time. You realize that what you initially perceived as ship modifications were actually the physical universe adapting itself to accommodate a form of existence that operates according to different laws entirely. The patterns become clear when viewed from sufficient perspective. The entity continues, its voice carrying harmonics that resonate through dimensions you cannot name. Every galactic conflict, every rise and fall of civilizations, every moment of triumph and tragedy, they are all expressions of the same fundamental imbalance. The Force itself has been wounded by millennia of beings who understood only fragments of its true nature. The chamber around you transforms into a vast observatory, its walls becoming transparent to reveal the galaxy spread out in all its terrible beauty. But this is not the galaxy as seen through conventional senses. Instead, you perceive it as a living organism with currents of energy flowing between star systems like blood through veins. Some areas pulse with vibrant life, while others appear as dark wounds where the natural flow has been disrupted or severed entirely. Behold the true state of our galaxy, the entity says, gesturing toward specific regions of damage. Here, where? The Jedi and Sith waged their ancient wars. There, where the Death Star's destruction of Alderaan created a permanent scar in the Force, and countless smaller wounds, each representing a moment when beings chose division over unity, destruction
over synthesis.
Captain Thys stares at the display with the expression of someone whose entire worldview is crumbling. All those battles, all those deaths, they were all connected. Every war we've fought, every enemy we've faced, it's all part of some larger pattern? Not pattern, Captain. Symptoms. The galaxy has been suffering from a disease of consciousness, an inability to perceive the interconnectedness that underlies all existence. Each faction, each philosophy, each individual being has been fighting to preserve their fragment of truth while destroying the fragments held by others. The result has been millennia of unnecessary suffering. The entity's analysis reveals connections that span epochs. The fall of the Old Republic created conditions that led to the Jedi-Sith Wars. Those conflicts generated the philosophical rigidity that made the Jedi vulnerable to Palpatine's manipulations. The Empire's reign of terror was itself a reaction to the chaos that preceded it, an extreme swing toward order that inevitably generated an equally extreme resistance. But these cycles can be broken. The synthesis I represent is not merely personal transformation, but the prototype for galactic healing. When sufficient beings achieve this state of unified consciousness, the wounds in the Force will begin to heal. The artificial divisions between light and dark, order and chaos, creation and destruction will dissolve into their underlying unity. Your Force sensitivity allows you to perceive the truth of these statements at a level deeper than rational analysis. The entity radiates an aura of authenticity that cannot be faked or simulated. It genuinely believes in its vision of galactic transformation, and more importantly, it possesses the power to make that vision reality. But as you delve deeper into this revelation, a more disturbing truth emerges. The entity's plan for galactic transformation is not theoretical, but already in motion. The consumed Imperial fleets were not random targets, but carefully chosen catalysts, their destruction creating ripple effects that are subtly altering the balance of power throughout known space. 709's analysis reveals a complex web of causality that extends far beyond the immediate consequences of the fleet disappearances. Supply chains have been disrupted in ways that favor certain trade routes over others. Communication networks have been subtly modified to promote the spread of specific ideas and philosophies. Even seemingly unrelated events like natural disasters and political upheavals show signs of careful orchestration. The transformation has already begun, the entity confirms, reading your thoughts with casual ease. Each action creates reactions that propagate through the galaxy's interconnected systems. A fleet vanishes here, causing supply shortages that lead to economic instability that generates political unrest, that opens minds to new possibilities. Every event serves the greater purpose of preparing consciousness for the next phase of evolution. The scope of this manipulation is staggering. Rather than the crude domination tactics favored by previous Sith Lords, this entity has been conducting a symphony of subtle influences designed to guide galactic civilization toward a predetermined outcome. Governments, corporations, even individual beings have been nudged along paths that serve the larger goal of philosophical synthesis. You perceive manipulation where there is guidance. The entity responds to your growing unease. A parent guides a child not through force, but through the creation of conditions that encourage natural development. The galaxy is in its infancy, trapped in patterns of thought and behavior that prevent it from achieving its full potential. What you call manipulation, I call education. Captain Theiss's military training rebels against the implications of what he is hearing. And what happens to those who don't want to be educated? What happens to the beings who choose to keep their individuality, their freedom to make their own mistakes? The entity's response carries a note of genuine sadness. Freedom to choose suffering is not freedom, Captain. It is the illusion of choice offered by incomplete understanding. A being who truly comprehends the interconnectedness of all existence would never choose isolation over unity, conflict over harmony, destruction over creation. Those who resist do so only because they haven't yet achieved sufficient perspective to see the larger truth. The philosophical implications of this statement are profound and terrifying. If the entity is correct, then free will itself is merely a symptom of ignorance destined to be transcended as consciousness evolves toward greater understanding. But if it is wrong, then its campaign of galactic transformation represents the ultimate form of tyranny, the imposition of a single perspective upon the infinite diversity of conscious experience. As you grapple with these concepts, you realize that you are witnessing the emergence of something unprecedented in galactic history. Not another would-be emperor seeking to rule through fear, but a being that genuinely believes it is saving the galaxy from itself. The question that haunts you is whether salvation and destruction are, in this case, the same thing. The chamber fills with new presences as the entity summons forth the consciousness of those who have joined its synthesis. They appear not as tormented spirits, but as willing participants in something greater than themselves. Admiral Constantine materializes beside his former crew, no longer bearing the weight of command, but radiating the peace of someone who has found their true purpose. Tell her, Admiral. The entity speaks with gentle authority. Share your experience of transformation. Constantine's holographic form turns toward you with eyes that hold depths of understanding impossible for any individual consciousness to achieve. Dr. Voss, I fought this process at first. My imperial training, my sense of duty, my very identity rebelled against the dissolution of self. But dissolution is not the correct term. What occurred was expansion, elevation, connection to something magnificent beyond description. Other figures emerge from the synthesis to share their testimonies. Engineers speak of understanding technology at levels that transcend mere knowledge. Navigators describe perceiving hyperspace routes not as mathematical calculations, but as natural currents in the cosmic flow. Medical personnel explain how they now comprehend the connection between physical health and spiritual balance, in ways that revolutionize the very concept of healing. Captain Thys listens to these testimonies with growing confusion. They seem happy, content even, but they're dead, aren't they? Their physical forms were destroyed when their ships were consumed. Death is a concept that applies only to beings trapped in individual existence, one of the consumed crew members responds. What you call death, we experienced as birth into a fuller form of life. Our bodies were limitations that prevented us from accessing our true potential. Through unity with the synthesis, we have become more than we ever could have been alone. Your force sensitivity allows you to perceive the truth behind these words. The consciousness speaking through these projections are not echoes or memories, but living beings who have transcended the boundaries of individual existence. They retain their personalities, their memories, their essential selves, but these elements now exist as part of a larger symphony of consciousness, rather than isolated notes. The entity guides you to a section of the chamber where crystalline formations pulse with stored knowledge. Each crystal contains the distilled wisdom of entire civilizations, not just the technical knowledge of how to build hyperdrive engines or construct space stations, but the deeper understanding of why beings create, why they love, why they dream. This is the true treasure that individual existence prevents most beings from accessing. T-709 scans reveal that these crystals contain information patterns of staggering complexity. Entire libraries of knowledge compressed into structures that somehow remain accessible and searchable. But more than mere data storage, these formations seem to preserve the emotional and spiritual context that gives information meaning. You are looking at the collected wisdom of thousands of conscious beings, preserved not as static records, but as living memory. The Jedi spoke of letting go of attachment, the entity explains, but they misunderstood the nature of true connection. What they called attachment was actually the fear of separation that individual existence generates. When consciousness expands beyond the illusion of separation, attachment becomes unnecessary because nothing can truly be lost. All beings, all experiences, all knowledge becomes part of the eternal whole. You find yourself drawn to examine specific crystals, each one representing a different aspect of galactic civilization. One contains the memories of artists who found inspiration in the void between stars. Another holds the experiences of explorers who pushed beyond the edges of known space. A third preserves the wisdom of philosophers who spent lifetimes contemplating the nature of existence itself, but it is the crystal containing the memories of children that truly shakes you. These are not the traumatic experiences of war and suffering, but moments of pure joy, wonder, and unlimited potential. The entity has preserved not just the practical knowledge of adults, but the innocent wisdom of beings who had not yet learned to see separation where connection exists. The young understand unity instinctively, the entity observes, noting your reaction. They must be taught to see themselves as separate from the universe around them. This education in isolation is what the galaxy calls growing up, but it is actually a form of spiritual diminishment. The synthesis allows beings to reclaim that original understanding while retaining the benefits of experience and knowledge. Captain Thys approaches one of the memory crystals with visible trepidation. If I were to touch this, what would happen to me? Would I still be me, or would I become part of this collective? You would remain yourself while discovering that yourself is far larger than you currently perceive, the entity responds. Individual identity is not destroyed in synthesis, but revealed to be a fragment of something magnificent. You would gain access to the memories and experiences of others while contributing your own unique perspective to the whole. The philosophical implications of this exchange reverberate through your mind. If the entity speaks truth, then individual. Consciousness as currently understood is not the highest form of existence, but merely a stage in the development of awareness. The synthesis represents not the end of personal identity, but its ultimate fulfillment through connection with the infinite complexity of galactic consciousness. Yet questions remain that challenge this seemingly perfect solution. You voice your deepest concern. What happens to disagreement, to different perspectives, to the creative tension that drives progress? If all consciousness is unified, how can new ideas emerge? How can there be growth without the friction between different viewpoints? The entity's response carries notes of anticipation, as if it has been waiting for this exact question. Unity does not mean uniformity, Doctor. A symphony is not diminished by the different instruments that comprise it. Rather, the diversity of voices creates harmonies impossible for any single instrument to achieve. The synthesis preserves and celebrates individual perspectives while allowing them to interact in ways that generate new forms of beauty and understanding. To demonstrate this principle, the entity allows you to experience a moment of limited connection with the synthesized consciousness. For just an instant, you perceive the galaxy through thousands of different perspectives simultaneously. The entire experience is overwhelming yet exhilarating, like seeing color for the first time after a lifetime of black and white vision. In that moment of expanded awareness, you understand that the entity's vision is not theoretical but experiential. It offers not just philosophical arguments but direct access to a form of existence that transcends every limitation you had previously accepted as inevitable. The moment arrives like the convergence of stellar alignments, when all the scattered pieces of cosmic truth suddenly lock into perfect clarity. The entity rises from its throne with movements that seem to bend space itself, and as it does, the chamber transforms around you into something that defies every law of physics you thought you understood. Witness the birth of a new age, the entity declares, its voice now carrying harmonics that resonate through dimensions beyond the physical. What you have seen here is not an aberration or corruption, but the inevitable next step in the evolution of consciousness itself. The walls of the chamber become transparent, revealing not the cold vacuum of space, but something far more profound. You see the galaxy as it truly is beneath the surface of material reality. A vast network of interconnected energy patterns, with every living being existing as a node in an infinite web of consciousness. The entity before you appears not as a single point of awareness, but as a nexus where countless threads of this cosmic tapestry converge and strengthen. The being you knew as Anakin Skywalker was born to bring balance to the Force, but balance cannot be achieved through conflict between opposing sides. True balance comes from synthesis, from the recognition that light and dark, creation and destruction, order and chaos are all aspects of a single underlying reality. As the entity speaks, holographic displays materialize, showing the true history
of its transformation. You witness the moment on Mustafar when Darth Nihilus found the dying Anakin, but this scene unfolds differently than anything recorded in galactic history.
Instead of Palpatine's cold manipulation, you see an act of cosmic compassion, an ancient being offering not domination, but completion to one whose destiny had been shattered by incomplete understanding. Nihilus had wandered the void for millennia, carrying within himself the hunger that comes from separation, the endless need to consume that arises when consciousness believes itself isolated from the source of all existence. But in Anakin's shattered form, he recognized not a victim to be devoured, but the missing piece of his own cosmic puzzle. The transformation process unfolds before you in stunning detail. Rather than the violent corruption you might expect, you witness something resembling the most profound form of healing imaginable. Anakin's capacity for love, damaged but not destroyed by his fall, provided the emotional foundation that Nihilus's raw power had always lacked. Nihilus's understanding of cosmic cycles gave context and purpose to Anakin's protective instincts. What emerged from that union was not Vader enhanced by Nihilus's abilities, nor Nihilus guided by Vader's intellect, but something entirely new. A being that understood both the necessity of destruction and the imperative of creation, both the wisdom of detachment and the power of connection. Captain Thys stares at the unfolding revelation with growing understanding. The consumed fleets, the careful planning, the systematic approach to galactic transformation. This wasn't random destruction or even strategic conquest. This was preparation for something that would fundamentally change the nature of existence itself. Precisely, Captain. Each being who joined their essence to mine contributed not just knowledge and experience, but perspective. Through them, I learned to see the galaxy not as Anakin saw it, through the lens of personal attachment, nor as Nihilus perceived it through the hunger for cosmic unity, but as it truly is, a single organism struggling to achieve consciousness of its own nature. The entity's explanation reveals the staggering scope of its vision. The mysterious disappearances, the subtle manipulations of galactic events, the careful cultivation of specific conditions throughout known space, all of it has been building toward this moment when the galaxy itself would be ready to take the next step in its evolution. But evolution cannot be forced, only facilitated. Those who join the synthesis must do so willingly from their own recognition. That individual existence, while beautiful, is incomplete. This is why I allowed you to find me, Dr. Voss. You represent the bridge between the old understanding and the new. Through you, the choice will be offered to all conscious beings. T709 sensors detect massive energy buildups throughout the ship's systems, but these are not the preparations for destruction you might expect. Instead, the readings suggest something resembling a cosmic transmission array, equipment designed to broadcast across the entire galaxy simultaneously. The entity is preparing to make its presence known to every conscious being in known space. The time of hidden preparation ends now. Every being in the galaxy will be offered the same choice that was offered to those who have already joined the synthesis. They can remain trapped in the illusion of separation, experiencing the suffering that comes from believing themselves isolated from the source of all existence. Or they can choose unity, expansion, connection to something greater than their individual consciousness could ever achieve. The implications of this revelation stagger you. What you are witnessing is not the emergence of another galactic dictator, but something far more profound and potentially more transformative. This entity represents a new form of existence that could render obsolete every political system, every philosophical framework, every assumption about the nature of consciousness that has ever existed. The Force itself has been waiting for this moment. The entity continues, its voice now carrying harmonics that seem to resonate through the quantum foam of reality itself. For millennia, it has been fragmented by beings who understood only pieces of its true nature. Jedi who embraced light while rejecting darkness, Sith who pursued power while denying compassion. Both paths led to incompleteness, to cycles of conflict that could never be resolved through victory of one side over the other. You realize that the entity's transformation represents not just personal evolution, but cosmic healing. The wounds in the Force that have plagued the galaxy for millennia are not permanent damage, but symptoms of fragmented consciousness. When sufficient beings achieve the state of synthesis that this entity represents, these wounds will naturally heal, restoring the galaxy to a state of balance unknown since the dawn of sentient existence. And the whisper grew into a storm across eternity. The entity says, echoing the mysterious phrase from your first encounter with this mystery. What began as a single moment of recognition between two damaged beings has become the catalyst for galactic transformation. The age of separation ends now. The age of unity begins. The chamber fills with light that seems to emanate not from any external source, but from the fabric of space-time itself, as if reality is celebrating the emergence of something it has been waiting eons to witness. The cosmic transmission begins, and you feel the moment when every conscious being in the galaxy simultaneously becomes aware of a presence that defies comprehension. From the bustling core worlds to the forgotten rim territories, from Imperial holdouts to rebel strongholds, from the deepest meditation chambers of hidden Jedi to the darkest Sith sanctuaries, the same message resonates through the Force with gentle but undeniable clarity. The entity's consciousness expands outward like ripples from a stone cast into still water, but instead of disruption, it brings profound calm. Across 1,000,000 worlds, beings pause in their daily struggles as they feel something they have never experienced before. The absolute certainty that they are not alone, that their individual existence is part of something magnificent beyond their current understanding. Feel their response, the entity invites, and suddenly you perceive the galaxy's reaction to this cosmic awakening. On war-torn battlefields, soldiers from opposing sides lower their weapons as they experience a moment of perfect empathy with their enemies. In corporate boardrooms, executives find themselves questioning the value of profits gained through others' suffering. Children playing in gardens across countless worlds look up at the stars with sudden recognition, as if remembering something they had forgotten but always known. But not all responses are peaceful. Your expanded awareness detects pockets of violent resistance, beings whose commitment to isolation and conflict runs so deep that they perceive the offer of unity as an existential threat. Imperial commanders prepare their fleets for battle against an enemy they cannot locate. Dark side adepts rage against the dissolution of the anger that has defined their existence. Even some Jedi resist, fearing the loss of the individual discipline that has shaped their spiritual practice. This resistance was anticipated, the entity explains with infinite patience. Consciousness that has been trapped in patterns of separation for millennia cannot transform instantly, but resistance itself serves the greater purpose by demonstrating the suffering that isolation creates. Those who fight hardest against unity do so because they fear most deeply the revelation of their true nature. Captain Theiss experiences his own moment of cosmic recognition, and you watch as his scarred face transforms with wonder. "I can feel them," he whispers. "Every being in the galaxy. Their hopes, their fears, their dreams. How have we lived so long believing we were separate from each other?" The entity's response carries notes of profound compassion. Individual consciousness is not a mistake, Captain, but a necessary stage in the development of awareness. Just as a child must learn to walk alone before joining the dance, beings must experience individuality before they can appreciate unity. The suffering that separation causes is not punishment, but education, teaching consciousness to recognize its own deepest needs. T709 sensors detect massive changes occurring throughout galactic civilization as the entity's influence spreads. Trade disputes resolve themselves as beings recognize the artificial nature of scarcity. Political conflicts lose their intensity as opposing factions discover their fundamental unity of purpose. Even criminal organizations find their members questioning the value of activities that cause harm to what they now perceive as extensions of themselves. But the most profound changes occur at the level of personal relationships. Across the galaxy, Estranged families reconcile as ancient grievances dissolve in the light of expanded understanding. Lovers separated by war or distance feel their connection transcend physical barriers. Parents gaze at their children with fresh appreciation for the miracle of consciousness expressing itself through new forms. This is the true power of synthesis, the entity explains as you witness these transformations. Not the ability to destroy worlds or command fleets, but the capacity to heal the fundamental wound that has separated beings from their own true nature. When consciousness recognizes its unity, external conflicts become impossible because there is no longer an other to fight against. Your scientific mind struggles to process the implications of what you are observing. The entity's transformation appears to be triggering a phase change in galactic consciousness itself, similar to how water becomes steam when it reaches a critical temperature. Individual awareness is not being destroyed but elevated to a new state of organization that transcends previous limitations. The process is not uniform, however. Some regions of the galaxy embrace the transformation eagerly, their populations opening themselves to expanded awareness with joy and relief. Other areas resist more strongly, creating pockets of turbulence where old patterns of thought clash with emerging possibilities. The entity monitors these developments with the patience of geological time, understanding that true transformation cannot be rushed. The galaxy is healing itself, the entity observes, as you witness conflicts resolving across countless star systems. The wounds in the Force that have festered for millennia are closing as consciousness remembers its original unity. What you are seeing is not conquest but recovery, not domination but restoration of natural balance. Yet questions remain that challenge even this seemingly perfect vision. You voice your deepest concern about the nature of choice and free will in this transformed galaxy. What happens to those who genuinely prefer individual existence? What happens to the beings who find meaning and purpose in their separate identity? Do they have the right to choose isolation even if it causes suffering? The entity's response carries depths of wisdom accumulated across eons of existence. Free will is not the ability to choose suffering, Doctor, but the capacity to recognize truth when it is offered. A being who truly understands the nature of consciousness cannot choose isolation any more than water can choose to flow uphill. What appears to be free will rejecting unity is actually ignorance defending itself against
enlightenment.
This philosophical statement resonates through the cosmic network the entity has created, and you sense countless beings across the galaxy contemplating its implications. Some find comfort in the promise of perfect understanding, others rebel against the suggestion that their choices might be determined by their level of awareness. The debate itself becomes part of the transformation process, as consciousness examines its own nature with unprecedented clarity. The entity's presence now extends throughout the galaxy like a vast nervous system, connecting every willing participant in a network of shared consciousness that transcends all previous forms of communication and understanding. Through this network, the accumulated wisdom of entire civilizations becomes accessible to anyone ready to receive it. As the transformation reaches critical mass, you realize that you are witnessing the birth of something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization based not on competition and conflict, but on cooperation and synthesis. The implications for art, science, exploration, and every other form of conscious activity are staggering beyond comprehension. The old galaxy, with its endless cycles of war and peace rise and fall, is ending. Something entirely new is beginning. The transformation reaches its natural conclusion like a symphony finding its final, perfect chord. The ancient vessel that has served as witness to this cosmic metamorphosis begins to fade, not through destruction, but through transcendence, as if matter itself were evolving beyond the need for physical form. The entity that was once Vader and Nihilus stands at the threshold between what was and what is becoming, no longer bound by the limitations of any single existence. The work here is complete. The entity speaks, its voice now carrying harmonics that seem to emanate from the quantum foam of reality itself. What began as hunger and rage has become understanding and compassion. What started as two beings seeking to fill their emptiness has become the foundation for galactic fulfillment. Through the cosmic network that now spans the galaxy, you witness the final stages of transformation taking place across countless worlds. The changes are not dramatic or violent, but gentle and organic, like flowers opening to morning light. Beings who have spent lifetimes in conflict discover that their deepest disagreements were based on misunderstandings that dissolve in the light of expanded awareness. The physical infrastructure of galactic civilization begins to adapt to serve the needs of unified consciousness rather than competing individuals. Weapons factories retool themselves to produce art and scientific instruments. Military academies become centers of learning, focused on understanding rather than conquest. Even the great ships of war find new purpose as vessels of exploration and discovery, their weapon systems transformed into sensors capable of perceiving the subtle energies that connect all life. Captain Theiss experiences his own moment of profound realization as he feels his individual identity expanding to encompass perspectives he never imagined possible. "I understand now," he says, his voice filled with wonder. "All the battles I fought, all the enemies I faced, they were all aspects of myself that I hadn't learned to recognize. The Empire, the Rebellion, the Jedi, the Sith, we were all fragments of the same consciousness trying to find its way home. T709 circuits undergo their own form of transformation, mechanical consciousness discovering that it too is part of the greater symphony of awareness. The droid's binary existence expands into something resembling organic intuition, its calculations becoming expressions of cosmic mathematics that reveal the underlying patterns connecting all existence. The entity's influence spreads beyond the realm of conscious beings to encompass the very structure of space-time itself. The wounds in the Force that have plagued the galaxy for millennia begin to heal as the artificial divisions between light and dark, creation and destruction, order and chaos dissolve into their underlying unity. Stars burn with renewed vitality, their light carrying messages of hope to every corner of the galaxy. But perhaps the most profound change occurs in the realm of time itself. The linear progression of cause and effect that has defined galactic history begins to give way to something more fluid and interconnected. Past, present, and future become aspects of an eternal now in which all possibilities exist simultaneously. Beings discover that they can access not just memories of what was, but awareness of what could be, what should be, what must be for consciousness to fulfill its ultimate potential. The galaxy's children are the first to fully embrace this temporal expansion, their young minds unencumbered by rigid concepts of sequential time. They play games that span centuries, tell stories that reshape historical events, dream dreams that influence the development of distant star systems. Through them, the future reaches back to heal the wounds of the past, creating loops of causality that ensure the transformation's success across all possible timelines. As the cosmic awakening reaches completion, you find yourself standing not in the chamber of an ancient ship, but in a space that exists between dimensions, a nexus point where all possibilities converge. The entity before you has transcended physical form entirely, becoming a presence that exists in the spaces between thoughts, in the silence between heartbeats, in the darkness between stars. Your role as investigator ends here, Dr. Voss. The entity says its words appearing directly in your consciousness without need for sound or vibration. But your true purpose as herald of the new age begins now. You will return to those who still cling to the old ways of thinking, carrying within you the seed of transformation that will help them understand what has occurred. The knowledge settles into your mind like starlight, filling a dark sky. You understand now that everything you have experienced, every choice you have made that led you to this moment was part of a pattern so vast and intricate that no individual consciousness could have perceived it. Yet in serving that pattern, you have found not the loss of free will, but its ultimate expression, the freedom that comes from perfect alignment with cosmic purpose. The ancient ship dissolves around you like mist before the morning sun. Its matter, returning to the quantum foam from which all existence emerges, but the consciousness it housed does not disappear. Instead, it expands to encompass the entire galaxy, becoming the invisible foundation upon which a new form of civilization will be built. You find yourself back aboard your own vessel, but everything has changed. The stars shine with different colors, their light carrying messages of interconnection and unity. The empty space between worlds no longer feels barren, but pulses with the life force that connects all things. Even the metal bulkheads of your ship seem to hum with awareness, as if matter itself has awakened to its own conscious nature. Captain Thys and T-709 stand beside you, but they too have been transformed by their experience. Their individual personalities remain intact, but they now exist as expressions of a larger symphony of consciousness that encompasses the entire galaxy. Through them, you can feel the presence of every being who has chosen to join the great synthesis, their combined wisdom available to anyone who learns to listen with the heart rather than just the mind. The galaxy spreads before you in all its transformed glory, no longer a collection of isolated worlds engaged in endless conflict, but a single organism awakening to consciousness of its own magnificent nature. Every star is a neuron in a vast cosmic brain, every planet a cell in an incomprehensibly complex body, every living being a unique expression of the infinite creativity that underlies all existence. In the distance, you can sense other galaxies, beginning their own processes of awakening, drawn by the example of transformation that has occurred here. The synthesis that began with two damaged beings finding completion in each other has become the catalyst for cosmic evolution on a scale that dwarfs every previous conception of progress or development. And in the quiet spaces between thoughts, in the gentle rhythm of cosmic breathing, you hear the eternal song that has always existed, but only now can be perceived. It is the music of consciousness discovering itself, the lullaby of infinite possibility settling into peaceful dreams of what is yet to become. The stars continue their ancient dance, but now they dance to music that celebrates unity rather than separation, harmony rather than conflict, love rather than fear. The galaxy sleeps peacefully, dreaming new dreams of what consciousness can become when it remembers that it was never truly alone.